Welcome to another edition of the Economy and Politics show where we discuss developments around the economy and how it affects the populace. Today, our first edition for the month of July 2021, we'll be discussing addressing the constraints to inclusive growth in Nigeria. It has become very important that whatever happens around the growth of Nigeria's economy, it must be inclusive. With me to have this conversation is Mr. Johnson Chukwu. He's an economist and the Group Managing Director of Cowry Asset Management. Nice to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Let's first begin with the fact that Nigeria has had this quest for an inclusive economic growth, and currently we've recovered from the recession and the growth is now a gradual process. But what are those constraints that you've identified that is limiting us from achieving this inclusive economic growth, considering the challenge of a poverty rate that is still high, unemployment is about 3.1%, and even inflation that is around approximately around 18%.
Okay, once again, thank you for having me. If you look at factors constraining Nigeria from having an inclusive growth, we need to go and look at the root causes of disparity in income levels. One of which is the level of education. Until you have a universal education available to all Nigerians, although we talk of universal education system, but unfortunately we have more than 10 million people out of school, 10 million school-age children out of school. Beyond that, you have a huge disparity between male and female access to education. So for you to have an inclusive economic growth where you reduce poverty across all strata of the economy or the society, people need to have access to education. That's one core factor. The other factor is infrastructural deficit. Infrastructural deficit limits the access that people in rural areas have to improving their living standards or improving their economic activities or income. So you need to address the issue of infrastructural supply across the length and breadth of the country. Then you talk of employment opportunities. The economy must be growing, must be creating jobs that those who are willing and ready to work should be able to get jobs. You need to address these key factors: access to education, access to infrastructure, and then access to employment as critical in improving the living standard of people, reducing the level of income inequality, and ensuring that you have an inclusive growth in the country.
Okay, so education, access to employment opportunities, and of course, infrastructure. Now, recently we had the National Committee on Poverty Reduction set up with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo SAN, as the chairman. The goal of this administration is to lift 100 million people out of poverty. The last count, the president in his address to mark June 12th celebration of Democracy Day said about 10.6 million people have already been lifted from poverty, about 10% so far achieved. I just want to ask you, we have this culture of setting up committees. Is there any hope or radar in terms of how this committee can really galvanize efforts to reduce the poverty rate? Recently, China marked 100 years of its Communist Party, and it's been credited with being able to lift over 600 million people out of poverty. I'm not trying to validate the communism system. I'm just trying to talk about the real pragmatic steps. Is it just a committee, or are there other areas that have to be looked into?
Okay, let's start from your question. Is there any hope that the committee could come up with policies that will lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty? Yes, the hope still is there, because if they come up with appropriate policies, which, just like you mentioned when you made allusion to China, China has proven that it's possible. We're seeing countries like Vietnam following the same process of lifting people out of poverty. We've seen countries like Thailand also following the same process of lifting people out of poverty. So it is possible. The key thing is that we must change our policy approach to addressing the issue of poverty from what you may call relief-focused poverty alleviation approach to development-driven poverty reduction approach. Relief focus simply means that you're going to grant some relief to people. And as you know, the word relief means it's a palliative. You grant relief to people, And the relief is not sustainable because it doesn't change their economic status. Unlike when you focus on the development as a tool for lifting people out of poverty. When you focus on the development, you're going to create jobs, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to provide access to education, access to infrastructure, access to employment, and then people are going to be productive, earn income on their own, and based on their higher income earning capacity, because they have education, they are employed, they will be lifted out of poverty. But if you continue with the relief-focused approach to poverty alleviation, then you're not going to succeed in lifting anybody out of poverty, because if you provide a meal to a child once in a day, the child will still go back to a poor home that can not afford decent accommodation, decent clothing, good, clean and pipe-bomb water, or even access to health care. So my advice is that let's change our focus from a relief-focused poverty alleviation approach to development-driven poverty alleviation approach, and that way we can actually lift people out of poverty.
Yeah, very well stated. Development-driven poverty alleviation approach. Now, I just want to quickly ask you, currently we are facing a double whammy of devaluation and inflation. Inflation, like I said earlier, is about approximately 18% because around 17.9% band, while devaluation is really having its effect, even as the Central Bank of Nigeria is working with the recommendations to unify the exchange rate. Dollar to Naira is different from what it was like last year, about 360. That's about almost 480, 500 based on the market indices. So how can we tackle these two double whammies? Because it's a challenge, whether it's for the earning of Nigerians, whether it's even for addressing socioeconomic challenges in this period.
Okay, my take on addressing the issue of inflation and issue of devaluation of the currency is that we need to focus on productivity. Secondly, it is improving productivity that leads to value addition of the products we produce that will enhance our export earnings or expand our export products that will address the pressure on exchange rate that leading to devaluation or depreciation of the local currency. Solution will be focused on improving productivity. And if we have to disaggregate that further, you have to look at areas like agricultural productivity. We need to improve on the yield of the cultivated land. We need to improve on the value addition of beneficiation of what you call extractive industry products into semi-produced, semi-finished goods, or possibly finished goods. We need to be able to produce at cost-efficient levels that are comparable to what obtains elsewhere in the world, so that products produced here will not just only meet quality in terms of quality comparable to what you have elsewhere, but also meet the cost threshold that obtained elsewhere. If we do this, we're going to see a reduction in inflation as well as stabilization of the exchange rate. But without improving productivity, without improving the value addition of what is produced here, so as to increase our export commodities, then you are going to continue to battle with this, what you call double whammy of high inflation rate, high devaluing currency, or a high devaluation rate.
Now, a follow-up to this, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, I mean, productivity is very important. Agreed. Their statement from the Central Bank of Nigeria, of course, the monetary policy side, is that there needs to be more fiscal alignment between fiscal and monetary policy to support this productivity. So let's just take one each. What should fiscal policy do, and what should monetary policy do, and how does this align? Because it's a very solid point you raised, but again, the pragmatic step at this challenging time.
Okay, and the fiscal policy is focused on creating an environment that will incentivize economic activity, productive activities. Such environment will include improving the security situation in the country. That is the role of the fiscal authority. Two, looking for sector that of Nigeria's economy that will have comparative advantage, and creating appropriate policies to incentivize investment in those sectors. It is the role of the fiscal authority. Such incentive could include use of tax tools, use of differential trade tools in form of customs tariff or lower customs tariff or higher customs tariff, positive or negative taxes to incentivize investment in sectors of the economy we consider as critical or where we have comparative advantage. That's the role of the fiscal authority. The monetary authority's role is to make sure we have macroeconomic stability in terms of monetary policy, monetary instruments, exchange rate, interest rate, and the inflation rate. These are the roles that the monetary authority is supposed to provide. Make sure we have price stability. Do we have stable exchange rates? Are we going to have low inflation rate environment? And are we going to have low interest rate environment? And maintain financial system stability so that you have a robust financial system that's able to provide credit to critical sector of the economy that needs such funding to go into productive activities. So these roles must be aligned.
Okay, a very, very clear statement from you there. Now, subsidies. Subsidy has remained a very big discussion in Nigeria. You're conversant with what happened in 2012, Mr. Chukwu, when people protested and all that. But there's a debate now. The debate is that one side are like, we need to subsidize for the poor and the vulnerable, particularly issue of income. We've just come out from a pandemic. It's a challenging time. Others are talking about subsidizing prices. And let me just let you know, I mean, the recent reports show that we spent about 30 billion naira in subsidizing electricity for Nigerians, and daily about 5 billion naira plus is spent on subsidizing petroleum product and the pricing. So which way should the government go from your own perspective? Is it to subsidize the income of Nigerians that are going through the whole challenges of the inflation, devaluation, and other issues, or to subsidize the prices? And that also has its effects.
Okay, let me throw a question back to you. If you subsidize a commodity or consumption that an individual does not have the income to consume, have you done the person any favor? If I don't have a job, and I can't earn income, and you are subsidizing commodity that I should consume, you're not doing me any favor. So my approach to subsidy is that let's subsidize productive activities and not subsidize consumption. When you subsidize productive activities and you create employment, then those who are earning income will be in better position to pay for those goods and services at even market rates. The approach we have today is that the subsidy we are currently implementing are depriving us of the resources we need to invest in infrastructure and invest in other critical sectors of the economy that will improve the productivity of the economy, and as well as wean us of the need to continue to live on handouts. So subsidies, as we currently apply them, are not effective. They've not been able to take people out of poverty. Rather, we are seeing more and more Nigerians going into poverty. The government should rethink the approach to subsidizing consumption and redirect those resources into sectors of the economy that will lead to improvement in productivity. Take, for instance, the subsidy on petroleum products. If you look at the fact that they'll be subsidizing petroleum products to the tune of 5.5 billion every day, then you are going to end up with something like 2 trillion naira consumption subsidy on petroleum products. That is higher than the amount that was spent on infrastructure last year. So imagine if we spend 2 trillion naira yearly on infrastructure, in 10 years, we would have built world-class infrastructure in the economy, in the country, and then we would be as competitive in terms of productivity as maybe South Korea or even Malaysia or Singapore. And then you will have almost full employment in the country, and it doesn't matter what the cost of these basic things that we're trying to subsidize is. Those who are earning income will be in positions to consume those things and be comfortable than what we have today.
All right. I mean, Mr. Joseph Chukwu, you've made a very strong point there. And so it's very clear what you said, that we should subsidize productive activities. I like the analysis you gave. If we are spending 2 trillion naira every year, we have done a lot in infrastructure. Though there are still a lot of people that have the argument, but it's nice to hear your own perspective. These are why these are the kind of conversations I like on the show. But thank you very much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, economist and group managing director of Cowry Management, for the time to discuss what we should do to address the constraints to inclusive economic growth. It's nice to understand it clearly that investing in education, and which also dovetails into human capital development, investing heavily in infrastructure, and also creating the enabling environment for economic activities that creates jobs are very critical things that we can do to achieve inclusive economic growth. It has become very critical considering the socio-economic challenges we are facing, from high unemployment even to stagflation. We need that to happen so that we can get the economy bouncing and working for everyone. Thank you once again for the time.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you. And looking forward to subsequent conversations with you as we are in the second half of the year. A lot of things happening in the economy and the financial markets. And that will be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics show. As you've just heard, addressing the constraints to inclusive economic growth in Nigeria, there are steps that have to be taken. But if you feel that you have one or two suggestions, or you have a question or a comment to make around today's conversation, please send your views, comments, or questions to otuabasi.abasecong@proshareng.com. Also, you can follow our social media platforms displayed on the screen to join the conversation around developments in the economy and, of course, the political space. Don't forget this period that you need to stay safe, considering the times that we're in. And also, if you want to get further articles or reports analysis around the Nigerian economy, log on to our website, www.proshareng.com, and then when you click on it, go to the right hand of the bar, click on Nigerian economy, and you get all the latest developments, data, reports, and analysis on the Nigerian economy. Let's make this happen next edition. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.